Me? In many ways I'm also standing in because about 3 weeks ago we announced that my deputy CEO, Ian Ryder, is in the short term, certainly immediately, going to be looking after our international strategy, the development of our international strategy. So why is Ian here, and why, you might ask, am I using his material? And that is because he managed to time this morning with moving home. And again, it's not an easy thing to change. That was set up some weeks ago. So I was very happy to come and talk to you about the structure, where we are, and where we are in our thinking. I think it's fair to say, though, that our international strategy is evolving. And we don't want to do that from the ivory tower of Swindon. I mean, if you've ever been to Swindon, you would realise what a joke it is to call anything a tower. It is. I think you get the message. We don't want to do everything just sat in Swindon. So we need your input. So what I will talk a little bit about today is our current thinking, and what you might be able to do to influence some of that as we go forward. First of all, though, I just want to talk a little bit about the structure of BCS, because we changed it. Last September, we launched a new organisation, a subset of BCS. This is why I've suddenly become the group CEO from the CEO, because we now have 2 companies. And I'm not CEO of one of them, although that does report into me. And that is where we put all of our business activities, if you like, commercial activities, a whole raft of reasons for that, and that is an hour presentation in itself. But it does give us some flexibility that we didn't have for a number of reasons. Wholly owned subsidiary, 1 share issued, BCS owns that share, so it's totally owned by BCS. But it is a limited company operating under UK company law rather than being part of the charitable approach that we have for the Institute. So that change gives us some benefits. That's run by Martin Lambert. Now, all of our examinations and certification business now sits in there. Our sales team sits in there. David Devine is following me, I think. He said that today. David is part of that organisation. The Institute, if you like, the rest of the organisation, includes everything to do with our membership. Membership is absolutely part of the Chartered Institute, and everything to do with membership sits in that side. But also, so we have David Evans, who's our membership director. Everything to do with the academy that you may have seen quite a bit about yesterday also sits in the Institute. All of our work trying to influence public policy, and I have to say that is pretty much UK public policy, I have to say. We don't really influence from the centre anything outside of it. And Phil runs that piece. Our policy, public relations, all that activity. Good morning. Are we okay? Only just really started. So Adam runs that piece, and then we have some internal, if you like, facility management of that runs across the board, things like finance and facilities and our internal team sits in the group as well. So we moved all of our commercial activities into learning and development. One of the issues we have when we look internationally is what do we do from a membership point of view internationally, and also what do we do from a commercial point of view internationally. And they're not necessarily tied together. In fact, historically, they really haven't been tied together. And we need to do a better job of that. Now, how we do that, as I said, we don't have all the answers. So what we'd very much like to see is, and we'd like you to send us, not just necessarily now, any thoughts you might have about how we might be able to develop some of those things. So let me get on to, if you like, the meat as the organisation. I'll tell you where we're focused right now. The UK has been our traditional income, as you can imagine. Most of our income comes from the UK. We have substantial membership. The percentage of our international membership as part of our total membership is far greater, really, than our international income from other products. We have to grow internationally. And we have the opportunity to grow internationally, and we have to do that for 2 reasons, really. One is The UK economy is not going to grow, so don't think that's going to fund growth, because it won't. Not in the near future, and not with the current policies. And we are totally apolitical, I have to say. And let me say that both sides have made a complete mess of this. So, that we can be apolitical, because I don't think either party last year have done any good at all. But the UK economy at the moment is not going to grow. Other economies are. You look at that and you think we really should be able to grow internationally. Secondly, the products we have do lend themselves to international growth. Not necessarily without some work, it's not automatic, but a lot of the things we do are actually becoming global standards, and we want them to be global standards. So there's a real opportunity for us to do that, and if we don't do that, the real worry is someone else will do that. And we don't own all the standards. There's a classic, for example, in IT service management, where there is a standard called IT. It comes out of the UK, unless you're in the States, where we pretend it comes out of the States, because you have to do that with everything. But it is pretty much a global standard for IT service management. The foundation that worries about that has, I think, 63 branches or something in that order around the world. It's a global standard. We use that standard to certify IT service management. We have our own chartered IT professional standard. There isn't anything that really compares to that. There are things that are subsets of that, but we build everything on what we call Sophia, and I don't know how much you know about Sophia, but this is a skills architecture for IT. Very detailed, nothing like it in the world, literally. 7 different levels, very detailed in its levels. And it is basically the standard architecture for IT skills. Everything we do is based on that. So our CITP, Chartered IT Professionals, at level 5. We're looking to develop something a bit lower down, level 3, which is very similar, I suppose, to the standard people get when they become professional members of BCS, but it isn't entirely that at the moment. And even a level 7 as well. So we're looking to develop more of that. And that Sophia has the opportunity, if we really promote it, to be the global standard, and everything that sits and runs off it to be equally standards at the different levels. And those are standards of certification of those skills. So what we have is this architecture, and then we certify people's skills against them at different levels. Chartered IT professional, 5, something else again, 7. I think the proof in some ways the proof of the pudding on Chartered IT professional is how many people now want to license it from us. Originally, it was a member grade of BCS, and we had to go through quite a change to allow anyone else to license it. And because we have a royal charter, it gives you huge advantages having a royal charter, particularly in the UK or Commonwealth countries, where it's seen as a status. But changing it isn't easy. I remember when we first came up with the Chartered IT Professional Standard, the new definition, and I said to my deputy then, Colin Thompson, I think we ought to go on and implement this now, and he said, well, when do you want to do that? And I said, well, Thursday seems like a really good day, and he said, you know, I think you'll find the Queen's busy on Thursday. And it turns out that those kind of changes to our charter have to go to something called the Privy Council. And the Privy Council is attended always by the Queen, isn't the Privy Council without it? So although I thought that was a joke, it wasn't. And so it does take time to get those things through. We made those changes, and we are able now to license professional bodies who have the ability to manage members in a way that we can. We have licensed, first of all, the Irish Computer Society. And just before Christmas, last thing we did before Christmas was license the IET, which is the biggest engineering institution in the UK, to be able to confer CITP. We have a number of other institutions around the world asking us if they can license it. And there's a balance there between what we want to do ourselves and what we want to do with other people. So it isn't an automatic thing. For example, if there's a competitor in Mauritius wants to license CITP, we'd say no chance, because why would we do that when we have such a strong section? So there's a balance there between how we get those standards developed. But then we're developing certification of IT professional skills at a whole raft of levels that we sell the certification. We're not a training organisation, we sell the certification. What we've not done, with some notable exceptions which I will come to, is done enough with those products. We have something called the higher education qualifications, and we've got very, very strong, very powerful implementations of that in Sri Lanka and in Mauritius. And they've become really quite important. They used to be very much the standard in the UK, if you go back far enough. They're really the equivalent to not really a master's degree, but it's basically you have another year in the UK and you can then get a master's degree if you have that HQ with certain universities we've got an agreement with. It takes probably 3 years, something like that, to get this standard. We have that arrangement, as we say, in Sri Lanka and Mauritius, where really there isn't anything local to compare with it, but there are other organisations coming in. But we've only really done it in those countries. There are other countries. Now, in the more developed world, where universities have their own IT degrees, computer science degrees, those really don't compete there. But we have a whole raft of certification of professional skills, people in work, certifying their skills at a whole raft of levels. And there's a huge opportunity there for, around the world, for those to be adopted and become standards. That's really what our international strategy is, to push those products, which are really quite good revenue generating, into a number of countries. Our current thinking is to do it in these areas, which is the US. We have some staff in the US. Not actually in Florida, which is rather unfortunate, because I do like Fort Lauderdale, but I can't manage visits there on the basis of BCS. We have some in Boston, and we have some in San Francisco, but it's such a huge place. But there's major opportunity. In the Middle East, we have a major conference in April in Abu Dhabi, and we are working with a number of countries at a very high level in the Middle East. They certainly have money to spend and a desire to do this kind of thing. So India is a major opportunity, but very difficult to do. We're looking at how we might do that. We do this with partners almost certainly. The problem with India is vast volume, but you have to be at an incredibly low price to do it. And then there's the whole question about validity of people taking exams. I mean, we've had a number of cases where, for example, on one of our exams, to actually buy the exam from us to take it cost you the equivalent of, I think, £120, and to get a past exam that somebody else did for you cost 140. They only charge you another 20 quid for you actually to get it without any effort whatsoever. Those are the kind of things you have to worry about in some of these markets, when you can't let our reputation run on that. And we were doing that through third parties who didn't have good enough management of that. So we had to take our products out of those organisations when we got it sorted out. So those things are interesting. The Far East and Australasia, again, are countries where we see an opportunity where people will want these skills, where there's money, and where we can develop a global standard for all these things. So this is kind of our strategy. We do, in that context, need to think about what do we provide to international members, and it isn't necessarily the same thing for all countries. It's not necessarily the same thing. We need you to help us with that. There's work going on about what do we want, how do we do this. There's some work certainly going on things like the web capability, because it's very UK-centric and things like this. But we need to get from you what it is you think we ought to be doing. So if there's one plea, if you like, for me out of today is, please let us know, and I'll give you Ian's card shortly, as to tell us what you think maybe we could be doing to help you in your country. And to be thinking about whether there are business opportunities as well as just membership. I mentioned about the higher education qualifications. And we need to to grow this business, we need more training providers who are high quality that we can authorise and certify in different countries to actually deliver the training, because most of our certification of skills. It sits on the end of some training. People do the training and then take the exam. And so it's very much tied to training compliance. Okay, so that's basically our international focus. This is Ian's contact details. I've got some cards if anybody wants one, because Ian is running this for us and would have been here if he wasn't up to his ears in moving boxes and removal people. I think you met him, and a number of people have met him this week, been around this week. But anyway, I've got a business card. So if you have input, please go back to Ian. I have business cards of his with his contact details as well. Happy to take any questions now. I won't unfortunately be here at the end of the Q&A session, so I'm happy to take questions now if you have any specifically for me.
Yes. I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
I came here a number of times, and I think 2 years ago there was this global gold brand of BCS. And we don't hear that anymore.
Sorry, the global brand?
Yeah, the gold brand of computing as we called it at the time.
Yeah.
Did that change, or I don't hear about it anymore?
Well, no, I mean the brand is the Chartered Institute for IT. That's what we're trying to create. BCS, we will use BCS but I mean the title, if you like, is BCS, the Chartered Institute for IT.
Okay.
BCS is in our Royal Charter. We have no option but to use BCS. It is fixed. It's in the Royal Charter. But the difficulty we had was if you explain to somebody new. Sorry, has moving screwed you up entirely now? Sorry about that. If you explain to somebody new, BCS, what does that mean? You have to explain what it stands for. Whereas I think the Chartered Institute for IT, by and large, is what it says, which is one of the reasons we wanted to really push the Chartered Institute. It doesn't necessarily have the same impact in some countries. I think the US, for example, Chartered hasn't got the same ring quite as it does in other places. But it's interesting, we did some work about 3 years ago with the IEEE computers, the CS division of the IEEE, where they were now asking for the names of organisations or standards actually for a global IT professional. And top of the list in the US came Chartered of the list there. So even in the US, if you look at the options, maybe the options aren't great, but global IT professional or something like that. Chartered still came out as the strongest one, meant the most, even if people didn't really know it.
But you talk about CITP being the gold standard.
Yeah. As the standard.
So it's still okay.
CITP is the standard we want to get to for IT professionals.
Is there any reason why the BCS doesn't target EU countries? I don't see it mentioned there at all.
EU countries. Yeah. Well, first of all,
it's like a strategy, maybe, or
no. Most European countries have got something themselves, their own computer societies. So most of them are computer societies, and there is a group of those that we are part of. CPIS, it's called CEPI. We're actually bigger than the rest put together in any measure. Number of members, revenues, whatever. We're bigger than all the rest added together, which is sort of interesting. The European Commission are trying to drive some things on a Europe-wide basis that we think are actually complete madness. And we have mentioned this for all of the 11 years I've been here, because that's how long that project's been running, and it's no further on than it was 11 years ago. Because they think somehow there's a European thing that's different to a global thing, and IT is a global industry, it's just absolute nonsense. So we're saying you've got to go with global. Most of the European organisations are very, very academic, almost exclusively. And they only worry about that aspect, the computer science aspect. And we have strong links on that, but they're not really doing much more than that. And if you take France, for example, there isn't of any kind. So there's, I suppose it's typical that the whole thinking of, maybe it's because we're an island, but the rest of Europe kind of think of themselves as, well, we need to do something through the Commission on the European level, which never happens because you never get anybody to agree on anything. and we can just get on with it. But also the Europe doesn't have any money. It's the real estate than we are.
I was going to ask, why don't you use your US presence to move into Canada, which is an easy market to break? It's one of the only countries that didn't go into recession.
Yeah. But
It doesn't have an international standard.
we certainly will.
An easy country.
Absolutely. But we have someone in Boston who's clearly the nearest one. We can certainly talk to them about that. Yeah, absolutely.
So we have charter status,
Yeah.
so that's legally protected,
Absolutely.
but we're inside the jurisdiction of the UK.
It doesn't actually have a restriction at all. It doesn't say UK.
But for example, for it to have any meaningful sort of value,
Yes.
if you want to ensure that somebody's presenting themselves as having that,
Yes.
they really do have that. So that's protected inside the UK. But somebody
Yes.
globally, I mean, you can sort of just make a statement that they have this, and
Yeah, you can actually, because it's trademarked. It's protected by commercial trademarks as much as it is by the charter itself. So, and we have registered Chartered IT Professional as a trademark pretty much everywhere you can move. So people couldn't use it elsewhere without coming in contradiction of a trademark. So I suppose it's everywhere except China, of course, we completely ignore everything like that. But you can't use Chartered IT Professional anymore. We did spend a lot of money when we went through that, getting the trademark registration everywhere.
okay, so it could genuinely be an international gold standard.
Absolutely.
If it was accepted by industry.
It's simply that. It's simply accepting that it is, rather than someone else could come along and use the word themselves. They can't do it. I realise we are we've been at the time, but
Any
are
other
we happy
questions?
there? Unfortunately, I need to dash and do something. What I'll do is I'll leave here. Yes, sorry. Yeah.
Is there a possibility of increasing the, having some frequent visits of humans in Sri Lanka?
Well, we've actually done quite a bit in Sri Lanka recently. Visits of our team to Sri Lanka. I think Sri Lanka has got actually a lot of visits. Ian was there, I think, last week or the week before. Martin Lambert is there very shortly. So I think we do regular visits to Sri Lanka. I think actually lots of other countries have got a stronger case for us doing that
Also,
than Sri Lanka. So we do a lot.
send some people from the committee.
Well, the way that works is that we have a membership board,
Yeah.
and the committees are subsets of that board,
Right.
and they run their own funds and finances, and Ian chairs that. So if you want the volunteer community to do more, then it's basically Ian and the board need to decide whether they want to invest the cost, because they've got basically a fixed budget, and what do we spend it on? And that's really what it comes down to decide. Sorry, Maggie wants to.
Yeah, I've often felt that, I visited Mauritius a couple of years ago, and I did, and although I did it on holiday,
Yeah.
I was on holiday with my daughter, I took the opportunity to meet the chair and have a discussion about it, because the membership board was just starting and things like that. And a number of people have said to me, lots of our volunteers travel on their own business,
Yes.
and it would be quite nice if they're travelling into areas where there are, sections or there are groups of overseas members, they could help to be involved in an event or something like that. Because talking to Mauritius a few years ago, they were saying that, they welcome some speakers, that we get all the speakers in the UK, and it'd be nice to get some different speakers out
Absolutely.
there. And I just thought that was something the membership board would perhaps look at some point, because our volunteers are always travelling, really.
So that's really one for them
We
to
don't
look
take
at, and
that.
I'm sure Ian will pick that up as something to think about. Okay, I'll leave on the front Ian's business cards. If you haven't written down his contact, I did say I'd leave them. So if you want to, then please feed back anything, any thoughts at all about either what you've heard today, what we're doing, maybe what you hear from other members of our staff today, and volunteers. Feed them back to Ian. We'll collect it there.